Hello, I'm Dr. John Kruse, and today I'm going to be I'm the author of Recognizing Adult ADHD. The topic for today is Free Time is Your Enemy. This is specifically directed at people with ADHD, and I'll be talking for less than 20 minutes, and certainly if you have questions as I'm talking, you can jot them down. I will answer them at the end. This will be posted on YouTube in a few days, as well as being up on Facebook within a few minutes. So why do I say free time is your enemy? And I came up with this phrase years ago after working with lots of adults with ADHD, and a really common problem I would hear is that someone had the weekend coming up and they woke up, probably slept in Saturday morning, but they could go wash their car, they could meet up with friends, they could bake cookies, they could start gathering stuff for taxes, they could catch up on their expense accounts. There were dozens of things they could do, some of them fun and engaging things to do, and what they wound up doing the whole weekend was dithering between not deciding what to do or what else. So at the end of the weekend, they felt completely unproductive, and worse than the fact that nothing got accomplished, at least in American society, the expectation is the weekend is a time to cram in all the fun that you're not getting at work. So the discrepancy between sort of performance, what got done, and what was hoped for achievable was a bigger discrepancy. So disappointment over their weekends was even greater than their weekday disappointment. So again, with ADHD, they may not have felt completely matched or liked all their tasks at work, but they were structured, they were presented in a way that most things got done, and they wound up feeling better about their work life than about their home life or their free time. And there's several different factors tied in with ADHD leading to why free time is your enemy. Um, so tied into factors with time management, and procrastination is a common feature of ADHD. What what is it about ADHD that leads to procrastination? One is that it's measurably harder to start tasks that have the anticipation of a difficult or strenuous or sustained period of concentration. So that barrier to initiate is higher for people with ADHD in measurable ways. Too many people with ADHD have problems with prioritization. So if there's multiple tasks, choosing or deciding which are the ones to go with first are difficult, and troubles with organization. So even if you know this is the one I want to start with, breaking it down into pieces or figuring out a trajectory for how to work on it is often problematic. So several other areas where time is critically problematic in people with ADHD is tardiness, often showing up late to events or meetings or things that are important in your own life. So many researchers for years have been looking at aspects of perception, estimation, management of time, and finding measurable deficits or problems. So the simplest one is just what's called time estimation. So if you have someone watching a computer screen and you're asking them to keep track of blue lights and shining different lights at different times or different stimuli, and then you ask them when one blue dot comes up, okay, how long was it since the last blue dot? Just estimating duration of time is measurably less precise in people with ADHD, and the important thing is that they're not consistently underestimating or overestimating. They have many more errors in both directions where they're wildly wrong on, say it was way longer than it was or way shorter than it was. So that's a fairly reproducible finding of problems that suggest a basic neurologic, how your brain is perceiving of events on a time scale. Other tasks related to time that people with ADHD pretty consistently have troubles with is just sequencing events. So if you tell a story of Joe walked into a room, he tied his shoelaces, he picked up a ball, he wrote on the screen, he called his mother, and then he went home for the day. If you ask people minutes later, did Joe pick up the ball first or call his mom first? People with ADHD measurably do worse on sequencing the events or remembering the order they took place in. How these issues with time sequencing and estimation affect daily life is that if you aren't accurately knowing how long it takes you to do a task, then that's going to make it more likely that you spill over doing that task and it interferes with your next task, or you don't even get to the next task. So these are not just sort of laboratory observations that are not interesting to daily life. These are directly related to sort of functioning in the real world. Another sort of realm or dimension of time is what's called time perception. So Zimbardo, who is a Stanford-based researcher, has done work for years on the intensity of their perceptions and sort of how they live their lives, and whether they're focused on the past, whether they're focused on the moment, whether they're focused on the future, and whether that focus is primarily around positive events or negative events. And pretty consistently, people with ADHD wind up scoring on these measures that there's sort of more tendency to be stuck in the present. So everything is now, and it's harder to recollect the past. It's harder to imagine the future. And yes, there's certainly people with ADHD who can wind up in perseverative, fixated states about a certain bad event in the past or a certain fear in the future. And some of that very fixation is part of ADHD, of trouble with shifting focus, shifting attention. But along the time dimension, getting stuck in the present is particularly prevalent with ADHD. Some of the other work involved looking at time and time processing with people with ADHD suggests that if you're asking people to keep track of the time while they're doing a task, that in itself produces a much greater cognitive overload or overwhelming aspect for people with ADHD than for someone of equal intelligence. So it's as if asking them not just to do the task, but to keep track of how long they're doing it makes it much more difficult for them to complete it. And that's a basis for the argument for why extra time is helpful, so that there's that less need for devoting a separate channel of the brain, as it were, to focusing on the time. And even if someone's doing that, there's less deficit at the final result in terms of if they were anxious or focused about the time. Other research into time with ADHD is focused on time slipping away, the sense that, again, if you're living always or more so in the moment, the feeling is that each moment's passing and you have less grasp on what happened before, and that itself can increase anxiety. One other angle, some of the research suggests that we even have indications that some of these time ADD problems may be focused on the part of the brain called the cerebellum, that sort of little tiny microbrain at the base or back of the brain, which other research has shown is involved in time measurement, time estimation, time tasks. So with all these deficits, is there anything that helps people with ADHD manage or perceive or deal with time better? And there's a few laboratory situation things. So one is, in several different types of experience over a period of years, stimulant medications pretty consistently help people with ADHD be more accurate in perceiving how long they are taking with a task, or how long the time interval between two events that they're asked to discriminate between. So that suggests again that there are measurable neurologic deficits that are helped by the stimulants. However, some of the studies have also suggested that just giving people money, paying them to keep track, you're getting a reward for each time you remember accurately the time perception, that actually in kids with ADHD seems to improve their performance better than people without ADHD. And that suggests that, again, maybe what the stimulants aren't doing isn't so much as improving the actual neurologic basis for time measurement or time perception, but maybe just increasing the motivational aspects of the task. So we talked a couple times back about the difficulties in sorting out whether measures are helping motivation and they're helping you engage in the task more fully or more efficiently, or whether they are actually helping you with the processing details of the task itself. At a functional level, you could say maybe it doesn't matter as long as this helps, great. And along the lines of getting back to the emotional aspect, the motivating aspect, when people are giving time discrimination tasks and there is an emotional processing element in it. So if you're looking for the happy face and how much is the interval between those as opposed to blue dots, people with ADHD, given the emotional tasks and actually increase their performance better and often outperform people without ADHD on some of these time discrimination tasks when there is an emotional processing element to it. So in the real world, what does that mean or what can we do about it? So again, I've mentioned medications, again, often clearly do seem to be helpful in people with estimating time, but there's certainly some non-medication approaches, and I'm a big fan of scheduling and calendars, putting things on a schedule. One helps you with prioritization, it helps you with organization, and it's a learning tool. So the last thing is it helps you learn how long things take. So if you're perpetually thinking your weekly expense report takes you 20 minutes to assemble and you allot 20 minutes to it, and you learn week after week after week, wait a minute, I really need 40 minutes for that, or conversely, it only takes 10 minutes, you're more likely to learn that quickly, having scheduled it, having blocked out X amount of time, because if you just think, oh, it takes about 20 minutes, and you don't even know whether you spent 20 minutes or 40 or an hour or 10 on it, you haven't learned anything, you haven't learned to be better at measuring time. So there are some, not just using a calendar, but going as extreme as keeping a stopwatch with you and keeping track of, a multitude of daily tasks at work or at home that you may be involved in, and learning more precisely, by measuring. I'm going to click this when I start baking the cookies and know, okay, it took me 25 minutes to mix all the ingredients together and have them ready to go, or whatever task it is. Some of those studies and research in that area has suggested that people with ADHD in the work realm are better at both estimating and sticking to their time estimates for certain tasks there, and less good at home tasks. And the conjecture in the studies all point to what I was saying at the beginning, that free time is your enemy. So again, in the workplace, there's expectations, there's fewer distractions when you're on task. You may well be likelier to be on tasks. There's fewer higher order decision making to go on, because once you've decided to do the task, you're in the task. Whereas at home, you're the boss. So, does it make sense to stop the cookie baking midway to answer the phone, or to wipe down that counter that's messy over there? So these other decision-making factors seem to add in and complicate the task more for someone with ADHD than with not ADHD. One of the other well-tested and extensively recommended approaches for helping with time management with people with ADHD is to focus on expected time of departure, not expected time of arrival. So if you have to get to your doctor's appointment at 10 and you're thinking 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock, many people with ADHD are at home doing this test, distracting themselves, not getting out the door on time, and then, oh my God, it's 10 o'clock, I'm not there yet. But if you reframe it so that, wait a minute, it's a half hour to get to the doctor's office, I need to leave at 9:30, then even if you're getting distracted along the way, you're getting distracted with the framework being 9:30 is when I still have to get out the door. And again, you may still miss that, you may still get off track or distracted, but you have a better chance of getting to your destination on time by focusing on expected time of departure rather than expected time of arrival. So I think that's about all I have to say right now in terms of or just overstress, or getting back to the people with ADHD may be more stuck in the present. There is some additional research that people with ADHD may be less likely even to perceive their life or what's going on them as a sequence or series of events because of that. And again, that may be tied back into why it's harder for them to watch a series of events and order them or reproduce the order in time. That sort of living in the moment may impact how those events actually get recorded in your memory or your life. So I see there's only one comment, and it's more just a comment that it's something I said seemed to have resonated with problems with time management, and free time is your enemy. So again, if free time is your enemy, your calendar, your scheduling system, using stopwatches as needed is your friend, and it's a friend to help you figure out what you're already doing, what's working, and what can work better. Next week's topic is object permanence and ADHD, and that is sort of the out of sight, out of mind issue. So that's all for today. Stay healthy, happy. So next week's the December 18th. I'll be away from Facebook for the 2 weeks after that, so there will not be a Christmas Day or a New Year's Day posting. And also, I'm not sure it's up yet now, but we have a questionnaire. So if there's particular topics you want me to talk about, or if you think these are too long or too short, or other feedback will be useful for crafting what presentations I do giving forward. So stay healthy, stay happy, particularly at this time of surging coronavirus infections, and I'll be back next week. Bye.